Hey Guy, today we will travel back to the damp, dramatic world of medieval Scotland, where the sheep are loud, the clans are louder, and life, well, it's not exactly like a cozy cottagecore TikTok. You're stepping straight into the late 13th century, and tonight, it's the highlands calling. There's mist curling over the heather, the sun setting behind jagged peaks, and in the distance, a bagpipe groans like someone stepped on a goose. Probably someone did. So before you lie down comfortably, remember to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are right now? Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a gentle fan behind you, and let's slowly step into tonight's journey together. You're standing ankle deep in muck, by the edge of a path that's less trail and more suggestion through grass. The air smells like peat smoke and wet wool. The village ahead is barely more than a huddle of thatched roofs, smoke curling from tiny chimneys made of loose stones and optimism. A scrappy dog growls at you from the shadows. You're already cold and wet. And yes, that's probably a sheep ladder tied to someone's belt. You walk past wooden stakes marking territory, some with rough carvings warning outsiders to stay away. Clan symbols, proudly burnt into bark or smeared in clay on rocks. This is MacDougall land, or at least it was yesterday. No one's updated the signposts since the last raid. You hear muffled voices, wary ones, and know that you're being watched. Here, everyone is either kin, a threat, or possibly both. Inside the nearest hut, you're invited or dragged into a smoky warmth that stings your eyes and coats your throat. The interior is low-ceilinged and dark, lit by a single tallow candle dripping onto a piece of driftwood. There's no furniture, just straw on the dirt floor, and a family of 7 plus 1 goat eyeing you like you're another ration to be divided. A small girl sneezes on you. Congratulations, you now have whatever medieval version of the flu she was carrying. Someone hands you a hunk of something. It's bread, probably. Hard, gritty, and chewy in a way that suggests both baking and accidental gravel. You're expected to eat. Not because they're generous, but because you might be useful. Maybe you can lift things, or throw a spear, or at least not die immediately, which, honestly, would make you a standout in this century. Outside again, the sun's dropped below the mountains, and everything glows that eerie orange. You hear a distant horn, not a musical one, but the kind that says, "Trouble's coming." You freeze. That's either a hunting signal or a warning of raiders. The difference is mostly how many people are screaming afterward. You glance at the others, they don't panic. Not yet. Panic is reserved for when someone's house is on fire. This is medieval Scotland, where clans like the MacDougalls, Campbells, and Stuarts are locked in a generations-long, poorly documented sibling-style rivalry. Think Game of Thrones, but everyone smells like smoked fish and wet earth. The tension in the air is constant. Life here isn't lived, it's endured. And it's never far from violence. You think about how modern folks post about slow living while baking sourdough. Here, slow living means hoping winter kills you after you've finished fixing the roof. There's a murmur about lowlanders next, people from the south with softer accents and better shoes. You try not to look like one. Your boots are barely holding together, and your tunic smells like a bog. Congratulations, you're blending in nicely. Now someone points toward the hills. A small group is returning. No one smiles. They're dragging something behind them. Not a body this time, thankfully, just firewood. But the silence that follows tells you how close it could have been. These people don't expect peace. They don't even dream about it. They just hope the next week won't involve rebuilding their hut for the 4th time this year. You learn quickly that your job, unofficial of course, is to help repair the watchtower, which is not really a tower, more of a high rock with a wooden perch and an angry teenager with a rusty knife. Still, it's important. You help carry timber up, your fingers numb and blistering from the work. It's not even real winter yet. As the stars blink into view, clearer than you've ever seen, you sit by the fire, rubbing sore muscles and listening to stories. Most are warnings. Never trust a Campbell, never walk past the stone circle on the solstice, never leave your boots outside, the goat might eat them. You glance at the carved standing stones nearby. They're older than the village, maybe older than the clans, covered in moss, twisted with vines, and leaning as if exhausted from holding back centuries of secrets. No one talks much about them, but everyone avoids them after dark. Historians still argue whether these were druidic ceremonial sites, astronomical calendars, or just early property lines made by people with a flair for drama. One academic even claimed they were used for ritual dancing, which, given how little fun people seem to have here, seems unlikely. Back in the hut, everyone's curling up together, not from love, but from necessity. Body heat is the medieval version of central heating. You find a spot next to the wall, which is made of packed turf and smells like a wet sponge. You wrap a rough wool blanket around your shoulders, ignoring the itch. Outside, something howls, hopefully a wolf. Hopefully not something worse. And just as you close your eyes, someone snores loudly directly into your ear. Welcome to your first night in medieval Scotland. It's brutal, it's beautiful, and it's only going to get weirder from here. By morning, your joints ache in places you didn't know had joints, and someone's elbow is firmly lodged in your spine. The hut is already buzzing with motion, even though the sun hasn't risen. You hear the scrape of metal, the clunk of boots, and the sharp hiss of a woman telling her child to stop licking the frost off the wall. You crawl out into the pale, damp air, greeted by a sky the color of old sheep's wool. The ground is mush, a never-ending soup of mud, dung, and disappointment. This, apparently, is the street. You step carefully. You fail. Your foot disappears up to the ankle in something squishy. Everyone else ignores it. This is normal. Welcome to your new home. A damp highland hamlet where the ratio of mud to solid ground is a cruel joke. Your host, a wiry man with more beard than teeth, slaps a rough wooden bucket into your hands. Time to fetch water. The lock is nearby, but not close enough. The cold bites at your fingers as you walk, and midges, those microscopic flying nightmares, swarm your face like you're the only meal they've seen all week. You swat. You miss. You walk faster. The lock is still and dark, shrouded in mist. Someone once said it's bottomless. Someone else said a kelpie lives in it and drags children under. Both might be true. You draw the water quickly and don't look down. Back in the village, smoke is already curling from hearths, and the smell of burned oats is in the air, again. You're handed a bowl of porridge that could double as mortar. No sugar, no honey, just oats and regret. Sometimes, if the cook is feeling adventurous, she'll add wild herbs. You ask if that means flavor. She says no, it means hallucinations. Breakfast ends quickly. There's work to do always. If you thought medieval life included leisure, surprise. That's only for the nobles. Everyone else is one step away from starvation at all times. You help mend a roof, which involves standing on a slippery beam holding bundles of heather, while being yelled at by a man whose entire vocabulary seems to consist of grunts and vaguely aggressive whistling. The hut you're fixing is collapsing under its own ambition. It's made of timber, sod, woven sticks, and whatever was lying around the forest. The roof leaks. The walls shift when you lean against them. But it's home to a family of 9, and that's considered spacious. Forget the stone castles. Those are for lairds and kings. You get mud and drafty corners. The hearth inside these homes is always burning, not out of luxury, but to keep dampness from turning everything into a fungal nightmare. The smoke has nowhere to go, so it curls along the beams, seeps into your clothes, and stings your eyes. Your lungs will learn to like it, eventually. Later, you're tasked with grinding grain. Sounds simple, right? No. It's an upper body workout disguised as a domestic chore. You use a cornstone, a heavy, flat disc over another flat disc, to crush barley or oats into flour. You crank it in circles for hours, your arms going numb, your back howling. This is why people had shoulders like oxen. Also why no one needed a gym membership. A few villagers whisper about a festival coming up, the quarter day of Samhain, marking the end of harvest. There might be music, dancing, maybe even meat, but mostly they're worried. This is when the veil between worlds is thin, and the dead can walk. You're warned to sleep with iron under your pillow to keep away spirits. You don't have a pillow, but someone gives you a rusty nail, which is apparently close enough. Oddly, even these beliefs, iron for spirits, salt for curses, herbs to ward off elves, aren't considered strange here. They're woven into daily life. You can mock it if you want, but the last guy who did fell off a roof and got kicked by a cow on the same day. Coincidence? No one thinks so. By midday, your feet are soaked again. The leather shoes you were given have zero waterproofing, and your toes are begging for mercy. You rest by the communal fire, where people take turns warming their hands and swapping stories. Today's story involves a man who met a selkie, a seal that turns into a woman, and married her, until she found her seal skin again and swam away, leaving him with 5 children and a broken roof. No one laughs. This is serious folklore. Half the people here claim to be descended from selkies, or at least know a guy who is. Historians still argue whether these tales were literal beliefs or symbolic storytelling meant to explain the dangers of the sea and the pain of loss. Some say the selkie myths originated from Scandinavian contact. Others argue they're purely Celtic. Either way, they're part of the cultural soup you now swim in, along with superstitions about owls, rowan trees, and why you should never whistle indoors. Later, you visit another household, a long, narrow hut with a turf roof and no chimney, just a smoke hole. The family here has pigs. You learn this by stepping in something soft and fragrant outside the door. The interior is crowded, chaotic, and alive with the clatter of wooden bowls and the sound of a child crying because his toy rock was stolen. One woman is spinning wool on a drop spindle. Her fingers move fast, her face blank with concentration. This is the medieval version of a fidget spinner, but necessary since everyone needs clothes and wool doesn't weave itself. The resulting yarn will be turned into tunics, cloaks, or those famously itchy highland socks. At sunset, everyone gathers outside again. Someone's playing a crude flute made from a goose bone. The sound is haunting, in a good way. Hard to say. You close your eyes and imagine what it might have felt like centuries ago to hear music echo across the glens. Music made from birds and wind and ancient breath. It's not perfect, but it's real. You lay down later on damp straw, sore to the core. Your body is slowly breaking down, or maybe adapting. You're still itchy. The fleas are still active. But your mind, strangely calm. Maybe it's the smoke. Maybe it's exhaustion. Or maybe you're finally starting to understand something about this strange, unforgiving land. One last midge lands on your cheek. You flick it away and let your eyelids fall. You wake to shouting. Again. But this time it isn't a baby crying or someone yelling about a lost sheep. It's a proper bellow, sharp, panicked, urgent. You scramble upright, head spinning, vision foggy. The village is in motion. People are grabbing whatever they can, cloaks, spears, sacks of grain, a chicken or two. Someone's already vanished into the woods. You run outside barefoot, which you immediately regret. The ground is frosty and full of things that poke. Smoke rises in the distance, not from your fires, but from somewhere further north. Raiders, or another clan, or both. It doesn't matter. In medieval Scotland, threats are always plural. A weathered man with a brow like a cliff face shoves a spear into your hands. You don't know how to use a spear. You say as much. He shrugs. Pointy end goes forward. That's all the training you get. Your heart pounds. You consider hiding. But there's nowhere to hide that doesn't already have someone in it, usually someone older and meaner. And just like that, the threat passes. It wasn't your village this time. Word comes back. A small outpost up the coast was burned. Sheep taken. A boy disappeared. Probably MacDonald's again. Or maybe Norscales from the Isles. No one knows. No one really cares. As long as it's not you, today's a good day. Still, the fear lingers. You spend the rest of the morning helping dig shallow trenches around the huts, just in case. They won't stop an actual attack, but they might delay it. You help sharpen sticks into punji-like defenses. A teenage girl shows you how. She's missing 2 fingers. You don't ask. Everyone's on edge, so work gets done faster. Fear is an excellent motivator. You patch roofs, reinforce doors, and hang more charms made of bone and twine above lintels. The village's one old warrior, a half-blind man with a limp and a terrifying cackle, takes it upon himself to lead drills. You march. You sweat. You get yelled at a lot. It's like gym class, but with the added incentive of not dying. You're told of an ancient feud between the McGregors and the Campbells, dating back over a century. A land dispute, a stolen cow, a marriage that went wrong, or maybe all 3. No one remembers the exact details, just that there's always someone to blame. It's a brutal cycle of revenge, retribution, and really bad communication. Historians still debate the true root causes of these clan feuds. Some claim it was economic, limited resources forcing clans into competition. Others argue it was cultural, honor systems taken to unsustainable extremes. A few even suggest English interference stoked the divisions. Whatever the reason, the result is generations of people trained from birth to distrust their neighbors. Later, you're taken along on a patrol. You don't go far, just along the ridge above the village. The landscape rolls out below you like a green, fog-covered quilt. It's stunning and completely unforgiving. One misstep, and you're tumbling into bracken and broken bones. You pass an old fortification, not a castle, but a crumbling stone brock, a remnant from centuries earlier. The circular tower still stands, barely thick-walled and hollow. It's filled with ravens now, and guano. It was once a stronghold, a symbol of power and protection. Now it's just another reminder that time eats everything. Inside, someone finds a rusted blade. Too thin to use now, but it's admired nonetheless. Probably Pictish, or maybe Norse, or maybe just very unlucky. You set it back where you found it, feeling a little spooked. That night, someone tells a story around the fire, a warning tale about the night riders, spirits of old warriors who punish cowards and oath breakers. The firelight flickers over everyone's faces. No one laughs, not even the kids. You wrap your blanket tighter. Supper is thin again, dried fish and something they call soup. You're not convinced. It smells like it once had vegetables, but mostly it tastes like watery ambition. You eat it anyway. A storm rolls in. You lie in your corner of the hut, listening to wind rattle the thatch like skeletal fingers. Water drips into a bucket near your head. You count the drops to stay calm. Someone snores again. Someone else mutters in their sleep. You hear the faint crunch of rats in the corner, chewing on something. Hopefully not your shoes. By morning, the paths are flooded. You help dig a small trench to guide runoff away from the huts. Your hands are numb. Mud cakes your arms. You're pretty sure something just crawled up your sleeve, but you're too tired to care. A neighbor is gone, vanished overnight. Some say he ran. Some say he was taken. Others whisper about fey folk in the woods, the kind that lure people away with lights and music. You think about asking if anyone checked for footprints. You don't. Not everything here gets solved. To distract yourself, you visit the old woman at the edge of the village. She's the healer, or the witch, or both. Her hut smells like moss and smoke, and something that makes your nose sting. She shows you her tools, bone needles, dried herbs, carved stones. She crushes a mushroom into a paste, and tells you it helps with seeing what you need to see. You politely decline. She offers you tea instead. You drink it. It tastes like dirt and disappointment, but your headache eases a little. She pats your hand and tells you that you'll get used to it all. Or you won't, she adds. And then you'll die. You appreciate her honesty. Evening falls again, and for once, no one's yelling. The air is still. Too still. You lie down on your patch of straw, eyes heavy. Your muscles ache in a way that feels permanent. But your thoughts drift more easily now. There's rhythm here. Brutal, yes, but also honest. You breathe in smoke and earth, and drift into uneasy sleep, dreaming of mist and old stones. The day starts with a funeral. Well, not a funeral like you might imagine. There's no organ music, no polished casket, and definitely no sandwiches afterward. Instead, there's a shallow pit in the hard earth, a wrapped bundle of wool and skin, and a group of villagers standing stiffly in the wind, trying to look solemn without freezing. No priest comes. The village doesn't have one anymore. He left months ago for a monastery and never returned. Instead, the old healer mutters a few words, something halfway between a prayer and a warning, and a boy tosses dirt over the body. Someone coughs. The wind carries it all away like it never happened. You ask what happened to the man. The answer is vague. He was touched. Could be disease. Could be a curse. Could be bad luck. Either way, he started coughing, then bleeding, then not breathing. People stopped visiting his hut days ago. You wonder how long he lay there before someone checked. In medieval Scotland, death is both constant and casual. Life expectancy hovers somewhere around 30, maybe 40 if you're lucky and avoid pointy things, hungry things, and bad water. You start to notice how many people around you are missing teeth, or fingers, or parents. Back at your hut, you try to warm your hands by the fire, which mostly smokes instead of burns. The wood is damp, everything is damp, and the wind keeps sucking the warmth out like a greedy ghost. You turn your cloak tighter around yourself and wonder how many layers it would take to feel even slightly cozy. The answer is more than you own. Outside, The village is buzzing with quiet urgency. You're helping mend fences this morning, not out of kindness, but because if the goats get out again, someone will lose their temper and start breaking things. And in this place, things usually means someone's ribs. As you work, you hear a story. It's passed between two older men, half whispered but still dramatic. Word is, down in Sterling, a local lord has been recruiting men for a campaign. Something about reclaiming land from another clan, or defending it, or maybe both. Details are fuzzy, but if there's coin in it, plenty of folks will go, even if they don't come back. You pause at that. An army. Fighting. Maybe a way out. Historians still argue about the nature of feudal loyalty in Scotland. Some say the bonds between lords and their men were rigid and structured, like a chessboard with titles. Others argue it was more fluid, based on mutual benefit, convenience, or sheer intimidation. In many regions, allegiances were shaped more by survival than principle. By midday, you're sent with a small group to gather peat from the bog. It's cold, wet, smelly work. You trudge through spongy ground that squelches with every step. At one point, you lose a shoe. The bog doesn't give it back. Everyone laughs, but it's a tired, sour laugh. No one enjoys peat. Someone jokes that the bog keeps secrets, bones mostly. Weapons, maybe even treasure, but mostly bones. And that's not a joke. Archaeologists centuries later would confirm it. The bogs preserved all kinds of ancient remains, including bodies so intact you could still see their eyebrows. Later, you pass the remains of an older structure, a stone foundation covered in moss, half swallowed by the land. No one remembers who built it. Someone suggests the Romans. Someone else says Picts, or fairies, or maybe just folks. It's strange how quickly history becomes mystery when no one writes it down. Back in the village, a visitor has arrived, a bard, judging by his clothes and the battered harp slung over his back. He's skinny and smells like rain and onions, but everyone is thrilled to see him. You wonder why until the evening comes, and he starts to play. His songs are strange and beautiful, about battles and lost loves and sea monsters. He sings of a woman who turned into a deer and a warrior who never died. Everyone listens. Even the grumpiest old man leans in. For a while, it's like the damp walls and aching hunger disappear. The bard tells you of a great battle decades ago, the Battle of Harlaw. A clash between Highland and Lowland forces, fought over succession and pride and land. A bloodbath by all accounts. Thousands dead and no clear winner. A waste, someone mutters. The bard just shrugs. That's how stories are born. You hear another tale that night, quieter, told in the corner of the firelight by a mother to her son. It's about selkies, seal people who live in the sea and sometimes walk on land. She warns her child not to stray too close to the coast alone. The selkies don't mean harm, she says, but they always take something when they leave. You lie down that night still hearing the harp's fading notes in your head. You dream of a seal with human eyes and a warrior wrapped in mist. It's oddly comforting, until the wind changes. They're shouting again. Not the sharp panic of raiders. This is closer, Messier. Two men from the village have come to blows. You're not sure over what. A sheep, a woman, some old insult. Fists fly, and so do teeth. A small crowd gathers, but no one stops it. Eventually, one man goes down and doesn't get up for a long time. Conflict is constant here. Sometimes with outsiders, often with each other. There are no police, no courts. Justice is whatever the strongest person decides it is, which makes every decision an act of strategy. You see the injured man later, lying on a board near the fire, cradling a cracked rib and muttering about revenge. His brother stands nearby, arms crossed. There's no talk of making peace. You lie awake a while longer. The stars overhead look like tiny chips of ice. The air feels thick with tension, like it might snap. You wonder how much of this world is held together by the threadbare threads of fear and routine. Still, there's something enduring about it. Brutal, yes, but also grounding, like the peat under your feet, like the ancient stones under moss, like the stories passed on because there's no other way to remember. Morning arrives with the smell of iron and smoke. You're pulled from sleep not by a rooster, but by the sharp rasp of metal on stone, someone sharpening a blade just outside your hut. You roll over and groan. Muscles you didn't know existed are sore, and your stomach growls like it's plotting something. Another day of survival in medieval Scotland, not glamorous, not gentle, but undeniably real. Outside, two young men are preparing for what they're calling a trial hunt. Not for food, exactly. For status. A rite of passage. They're going after a red deer, which might not sound impressive until you remember that the red deer here are enormous, fast, and not at all interested in being hunted. They also bite. You learned that the hard way watching one ram a cousin in the shin. You're not invited to join the hunt. You haven't earned that kind of trust. But you're allowed to help prepare. You carry water, strip bark for cordage, and help smear mud on their faces for luck. One of them gives you a nod. It's the closest thing to respect you've felt in days. As they vanish into the misty woods, the village slips into its usual rhythm. You're assigned to help with tanning today, specifically stretching and scraping hides. It smells exactly as bad as you'd expect, like old meat and sadness. You spend hours scraping sinew from stiff, hairy animal skins while a woman explains the process. Soak, scrape, stretch, smoke. Repeat. It's messy, brutal work, but leather is valuable. It's used for shoes, belts, armor, and more. Ruin a hide, and you're not just wasting material, you're insulting the animal's spirit. No pressure. While you work, an old man tells you about the wolf heads, people declared outlaws by the king. Once branded a wolf's head, anyone could kill you without consequence. You were outside the law. No protection. No mercy. Just you, the woods, and your luck. Historians still argue whether the wolf's head law was used more as a legal tool or a political weapon. Some believe it was an efficient way to deal with criminals in remote areas. Others think it was abused, used to silence rivals or seize land. Either way, it turned people into prey, human red deer, running for their lives. By midday, the deer hunters return. One has a gash across his cheek and a broken spear. The other is limping but grinning, dragging a bloodied haunch behind him. Success. Sort of. Everyone gathers to inspect the meat, slap backs, and pretend they weren't secretly hoping the boys would fail just a little. There's no feast, nothing fancy. Just roasted meat over open flame, shared in uneven chunks. It's tough, gamey, and absolutely glorious after weeks of salted fish and barley porridge. Someone plays a pipe. Someone else tries to sing. You're handed a strip of deer meat and manage to not drop it in the fire. Small wins. Later, you're invited to help with the salting process. Meat preservation is an art here. Salt is precious, traded for, hoarded, protected. Without it, meat spoils in hours. You layer chunks in a clay-lined pit, coat them with coarse white grains, and cover it all with leaves. It's like building a meaty lasagna. You try not to think about how this will taste in 3 weeks. In the evening, as the fire crackles low, a visiting merchant arrives. He's muddy and hunched, leading a donkey with 2 bulging packs. Everyone crowds around. Trade is rare here. He lays out his wares: wool from the lowlands, a broken mirror, a pouch of foreign spices that might be sawdust, and, most exciting of all, glass beads. Tiny blue, shimmering beads. You stare. They look like pieces of the sky, frozen and polished. A woman trades a carved comb for 5 of them. Another offers a knife. You have nothing to trade. But the merchant lets you hold 1 bead for a moment. It's cold and smooth, and it makes your calloused fingers feel clumsy. Magic, in its own quiet way. That night, someone tells a story about the Stone of Scone, a sacred block said to crown kings, hidden and stolen more times than anyone can count. Some believe it holds divine power. Others say it's just a big rock people keep fighting over. Either way, it matters more than anyone can explain. You fall asleep that night to the scent of smoke and venison. In your dreams, the blue bead rolls through endless forests, across hills and rivers, glowing like a promise. You wake suddenly to a sound like thunder. Only it's not thunder. It's hooves. Dozens of them. A small group of riders pass on the ridge, silhouetted against the moonlight. You press yourself flat against the ground near your hut, heart hammering. No one speaks. You barely breathe. They don't stop. Just ride past like ghosts. But everyone feels it. Tension like a net drawn tight. The next morning, you find hoof prints everywhere, deep, muddy reminders that danger never really leaves. Some say they were messengers. Others say raiders. One boy swears he saw a banner with a serpent. No one's sure what it means, but the adults begin quietly sharpening blades again. You're tasked with helping boil leather strips for makeshift armor. You dunk them in a bubbling cauldron, wait until they stiffen, then stretch them onto wooden forms. It's a poor man's cuirass, but better than nothing. You try on a piece and immediately regret it. It smells like boiled cow and fits like wet cardboard. Still, you get the sense that something is coming. The birds are quieter. People talk in low voices. Even the children are subdued, stacking stones into meaningless piles just to keep their hands busy. You find yourself staring at the woods more often, listening, wondering, how long can a village like this stay standing? You wake to silence, not the peaceful kind, not birdsong or a sleepy breeze. No, this silence feels thick, loaded, like the whole world's holding its breath. You slip outside and look around. The sky's overcast, but it's not raining. No smoke curls from the cooking huts. No livestock noise. No idle chatter. Just quiet. Too quiet. And then you see them. 3 men, strangers, at the edge of the village. Mounted. Wearing padded coats and helmets. Their boots too clean for people who live here. One has a rusted chain around his neck, heavy as a threat. Another carries a scroll tucked into his belt like a dagger. They aren't smiling. You duck behind a pile of firewood and listen. The scroll is read aloud. A proclamation, land dispute, reassignment of territory, orders from some distant lord who's never set foot here. One of the men uses words like confiscate, tribute, and insubordination. Another shows off the head of a sheep as evidence that the village owes a fine. For theft. You don't remember any theft. No one does. But the men don't care. They demand grain, livestock, iron tools, and 2 volunteers for service, men who can fight, or who can die trying. This is one of those moments that shapes medieval life. Authority dropped from above like an anvil. You feel it in your chest, how far away power lives, and how close its boots can march. Historians still argue over how centralized medieval Scottish governance really was. Some say local lairds held most of the power, governing their domains with little interference from kings. Others argue that royal edicts, often enforced through messengers like these, were increasingly used to tighten control, even if they lacked the teeth to fully enforce them. What's clear to you now is that power doesn't need to be consistent. It only needs to show up once in a while and remind you it exists. Your village's elders offer up a goat, a small one, and some barley. It's not enough. Voices rise. The men on horseback reach for their swords. And just like that, a compromise is made. They'll take 1 volunteer instead of 2. Everyone looks at each other. Then they look at you. You try to swallow, but your throat's too dry. You've been here just long enough to be considered part of the village, not long enough to be missed if you vanish. And you're not related to anyone important. That's what survival often comes down to, relational math. Who can afford to lose you? You raise your hand. Sort of. It's more like your hand raises itself. Or maybe the wind nudges it. Or maybe you're just tired of wondering when something terrible will happen. Better to walk into it than wait for it. You're given an hour to gather your things. Someone hands you a loaf of dense bread and a strip of cloth that smells like someone's grandmother. Another quietly slips you a tiny carved token, a crude figure meant to protect travelers. You thank them all. You hate them all a little too. Before you go, you're taken aside by the healer. She presses something into your hand. It's a dried root, twisted and bitter. For pain, she says. You ask if it works. She shrugs. Sometimes. You're lifted onto a pony. Not your pony, one of the soldiers' spares. It's moody and clearly hates you. You grip the reins like they're your only connection to the ground, which, in a way, they are. The ride is long and bumpy. The soldiers don't talk to you much. One hums a tune that sounds like a dirge. You pass bogs, black rivers, and broken trees that look like sleeping giants. Every so often, you pass a stone cross, half buried in moss. You wonder if they mark graves or warnings. Eventually, you reach a fortified settlement. It's not a castle, exactly, more like a walled farmstead with a tower stuck on top. Guards watch you approach, spears in hand, eyes bored. Inside, everything feels colder, even the air. You're taken to the barracks, a long wooden hall that smells like wet wool and burned meat. Other conscripts are already there. Most are your age, some younger. One is missing an eye and doesn't speak. Another has a laugh that sounds like it's covering something broken. You're given a tunic with a crude emblem, a red boar on green, and a blunt spear. The shaft is splintery. The tip is optimistic. You poke the ground with it. It bends. Your training begins the next morning. And by training, they mostly mean yelling. Lots of it. You're taught to march badly. To thrust your spear, worse. To hold formation, kind of. It's exhausting, humiliating, and somehow still better than tanning hides. They feed you porridge so thick it fights back. Sometimes there's meat in it. Sometimes it's just mystery lumps. You eat anyway. Hunger doesn't care about texture. In your rare, quiet moments, you talk with the others. One boy claims he once saw the Loch Ness Monster. Another swears he's descended from Pictish kings. One girl, yes, a girl, dresses like a boy and fights better than all of you. No one questions it. Everyone knows better. And then there's Angus. Big. Loud. Laughs like a waterfall. He claims to have punched a cow once and insists it mooed in surrender. He adopts you as a camp brother, which mostly involves making fun of you and teaching you how not to hold a sword like a broom. One evening, you hear your first bagpipes. They echo across the valley like ghosts screaming through tin. You hate it at first. Then it kind of grows on you, like a wart with rhythm. You're told your unit may be sent north, something about a border dispute. Maybe the Isles. Maybe a skirmish. It's always maybe, but the tension is rising. Even Angus starts sleeping in his boots. Before lights out, you talk to the girl. Her name is Isla. She says she used to herd sheep in the highlands. Sheep were nicer than people, she says. Smarter too. You both laugh, and it feels real for the first time in days. You lie on your straw mat that night, wrapped in your scratchy blanket, and think about the village. The red deer. The blue bead. You wonder if the goat they gave away missed you. You wonder if anyone else did. Sleep finally comes. Not peacefully, but hard, fast, like a door slammed shut. The sun barely breaks through the mist when they line you up. You're not quite sure why you're standing in a half-formed row with 20 other people holding crooked spears, but you have a strong suspicion it has something to do with the word levy. You heard the officer bark it earlier, while chewing on something that definitely wasn't food. Maybe tobacco. Maybe a chunk of his own fury. Hard to say. Levy, as you now learn, means you've just been conscripted into what vaguely resembles an army. Not a standing army, mind you, those don't really exist yet, not in Scotland. You're part of a feudal muster, a mashup of volunteers, conscripts, and people who were inconvenient to keep around. The only qualification is that you still breathe and can hold a stick. You practice walking in a line. Then you practice holding your spear at the right angle. Then you spend 15 minutes getting yelled at for walking in a line while holding your spear at the wrong angle. Progress. One man, the drill master, has one eye and 3 fingers. He uses a stick to hit your legs when you move too slowly. You've been hit 5 times this morning. You name the stick regret. You spend most of your time either drilling or doing chores around the camp. You fetch water, haul firewood, and try to make yourself useful enough to avoid extra duty, but not so skilled they start assigning you real tasks. You find that middle ground of mediocrity and cling to it like it's a warm blanket. That afternoon, a priest arrives. He's gaunt, carries a thin black book, and talks like someone who's very used to not being listened to. He mutters blessings in Latin over your unit, tosses a splash of holy water. One guy sneezes, and then leaves just as quickly. You wonder if he blessed your blisters. Unlikely. After dinner, more gruel, slightly less crunchy than usual. Angus pulls you aside. Want to see something weird? He asks, eyes twinkling. You're not sure if this is a trap, but your curiosity is stronger than your sense of self-preservation, so you follow him to the edge of the camp. There, buried beneath a crooked pine tree, is a massive stone slab half covered in moss. Symbols are carved deep into its surface, swirling patterns, animals with too many legs, circles within circles. It's Pictish, Angus says, older than all of us. You run your fingers over the grooves. It's cold, too cold, like the stone remembers something it doesn't want to share. You ask what it means. No one really knows, he shrugs. Some say it's a map. Others think it's magic. One fella claimed it's just some drunk's idea of a joke. Historians still debate the true meaning of Pictish stones. Theories range from tribal insignia to calendars to ceremonial markers. Some believe they commemorate battles. Others think they're spiritual in nature, a language of symbols lost to time. What's clear is that they mattered. Someone once took time to carve a story into stone. You stare at it a little longer before heading back. That night, your dreams are strange. Shapes within shapes. animals that watch. A stag that speaks in riddles and laughs like bagpipes. You wake up and immediately regret it. Rain has started, the cold, horizontal kind that seems to slap your soul. Your tunic is damp before you even get your boots on. The barracks leak. Your bed is wet straw now. Even your regrets are soggy. A horn sounds. Marching drill. You groan, but you march. They have you practice formations. Shield wall, open rank, half-turn retreat. Most of it is theory. You still don't have proper shields. Or uniforms. Or a clue. But the officers insist it matters. Discipline wins wars, they yell. You're pretty sure it also causes ulcers. As the week drags on, you notice something odd. A few men keep slipping away at night. Not far, but enough that others whisper. Isla tells you she caught one of them burying something. Money? A charm? A really bad poem? You don't know, but you start to understand something deeper. No one here entirely trusts each other. You might fight beside these people, but they're not your family. They're barely your allies. Everyone's got their own plan for getting out alive. One night, huddled near the fire, you hear rumors of a coming campaign. Not north as expected, but south, toward the borderlands, near where the English watchtowers glint like wolf eyes in the dark. Some say it's about a missing noble's daughter. Others claim it's over cattle. Angus swears someone insulted someone else's grandmother, and now an entire valley's at stake. No one really knows, but the fear is real. You sharpen your spear with a rock and hope it holds. You've never used it for more than prodding firewood. Then comes the inspection. A real lord arrives. You know he's important because he has a horse that doesn't hate him and a cloak that actually repels water. His beard looks like it was combed this decade. He doesn't speak much, just rides past the rows, nodding, judging. He stops in front of you. You try to look brave. You end up looking like someone trying not to sneeze in front of royalty. Too skinny, he mutters, then rides on. You'll take it as a compliment. That night, the officer confirms it. Your levy is being deployed in 2 days. You're told to prepare for a march. Pack light, don't forget your knife, and definitely don't bring any food you're not willing to share. You sit by the fire, wrapping your feet in dry cloth. Isla tightens her belt. Angus hums a tune. Everyone's quiet in their own way. It's that strange calm before a storm, the one where your heartbeat is louder than your thoughts. You look up at the sky. No stars tonight, just clouds and the soft hiss of falling rain. The kind of night that makes you wonder if history will remember your name. Probably not, but maybe the Pictish stones will. You wake to boots pounding on wet earth and the clanging of a dented cooking pot being used as a makeshift bell. Someone shouts your name, or at least a version of it close enough to jolt you upright. The levy is on the move. You're leaving the camp today. Not in some grand parade, mind you. There are no banners flapping in the wind, no noble steed leading a polished column of elite soldiers. It's more like a tired crowd at a medieval music festival packing up their tents after the rain. But instead of heading to warm beds and dry ale, you're marching toward a skirmish no one fully understands. Your boots squelch in the mud, each step heavier than the last. Your spear bounces awkwardly on your shoulder, hitting the back of your head every third pace. You try to adjust it, but then it hits your neighbor, and now you're both annoyed. No one says anything. You're too tired to argue. You pass through thick woods, soggy meadows, and the occasional burned-out croft, the charred skeleton of someone's former home. A dog's skull lies half-buried near one such ruin. No one wants to ask what happened here. Some things are quieter when left unanswered. That night, your levy camps on a rocky ridge overlooking a dark valley. Fires flicker low, not for warmth, but so no one spots you. You huddle around one with Angus and Isla, sharing hard bread and what might once have been cheese. Mostly it's just a suggestion of cheese now. Rumors fly through the camp like crows circling a battlefield. Some say enemy raiders are nearby. Others whisper of outlaw clans who stalk the night. One fellow insists he heard bagpipes played backward, which surely means witchcraft. You give him a look, and he goes quiet. Later, a scout returns, muddy, limping, barely able to breathe. The officers crowd around him, and though you can't hear the full report, the tension afterward is unmistakable. Torches are doused. Orders are given in whispers. You're told to sleep with your boots on. You try, but sleep doesn't come easy when you suspect someone may try to stab you before dawn. You lie there, staring at the gray clouds above, and remember what your village elder once said. When war comes, it doesn't knock. It just kicks the door in and eats your soup. You didn't understand it then. Now it makes perfect sense. At some unholy hour of the morning, a horn blast cuts through the chill. You scramble up, spear in hand, heart pounding. You expect to see fire, maybe charging horses. But it's fog. Thick, soupy. You can taste it on your tongue, fog. The perfect cover for an ambush. And sure enough, it comes, not in a roaring cavalry charge, but in the sudden twang of arrows slicing through mist, followed by panicked shouting. A man beside you drops before you even realize what's happened. The air becomes chaos. Blades clashing, boots thundering, screams muffled by fog and fear. You barely register the enemy as more than moving shapes in the gloom. You stab forward blindly and feel resistance, something soft, then something harder. You don't stop to think about it. There's no time. Someone grabs you from behind. You twist, flail, jab backward. They scream, and then they're gone. Your breathing is ragged. The fog seems to cling tighter. Your vision narrows. You can't tell if it's blood or sweat running down your face. You crouch, trying to listen for familiar voices. You hear Isla. She's yelling something, but it's too distant. Then silence. The fight ends not with a final cry, but a slow unraveling. The fog begins to lift, revealing a landscape of broken bodies, scattered weapons, and stunned survivors. You're standing in a puddle of someone else's blood, your hands shaking. Your spear is cracked. Your tunic is torn. And somehow you're still alive. Historians still argue whether these early border skirmishes truly counted as wars, or were more like a continuous series of feuds wearing military costumes. Some accounts frame them as organized conflict, lords defending land and law. Others describe them as lawless raids, with no clear sides beyond who had the bigger stick. You suspect both are true. Order and chaos dance together in medieval Scotland, like two drunks arguing over who started the brawl. Later, you help gather the wounded. Some groan, others don't move at all. A boy no older than 15 stares blankly at the sky, an arrow buried in his side. You close his eyes with trembling fingers. No one cheers. There are no victory songs, just the quiet shuffling of tired feet and the occasional sob. As the sun rises, the officers hold a roll call. Nearly a third of your levy is gone. The rest are battered and haunted. You spot Angus. He's limping, but smiling through a cracked tooth. You see that one guy with the axe, he says. I threw a rock at his head. You laugh, mostly from the absurdity of it all. Laughter is the only thing that feels real. The levy's journey continues, but now every step feels heavier. The road winds back toward safer lands, or at least lands that currently aren't on fire. Your wounds scab over. Your spear is replaced. Your rations grow even more questionable. But you keep moving. At a riverside camp, someone plays a tune on a whistle. It's surprisingly gentle. You sit by the water and wash the grime from your face. For a moment, it feels almost peaceful. Almost. But in the trees across the river, you spot a shadow that wasn't there a moment ago. You blink. Gone. You tell yourself it was nothing. You lie. Your levy doesn't return to the village. Not yet. Instead, they're rerouted north, to a stone-walled holding near the coast, where the wind smells like old salt and regret. A handful of wooden watchtowers lean drunkenly around the edges of the fort, their roofs patched with thatch and prayers. You're told this is a strategic post, though it mostly feels like a place they send people when they don't know what else to do with them. The fortress, if you can call it that, was built by Norsemen long ago, and every plank creaks with the memory of cold raids and longboats gliding through the mist. You're assigned a corner bunk in the top tower, where the wind finds your toes every night no matter how tightly you wrap your cloak. The days here are different. Less marching, more waiting. You're given tasks that feel vaguely important, reinforcing walls with mud, checking for moss rot, dragging stones from one pile to another just so someone can say you've done it. The officers call it fortification maintenance. You call it extreme landscaping. You're also placed on lookout duty, 6 hours on, 6 hours off. From the tower, the view stretches out to craggy cliffs and endless sea. It's beautiful in that grim, intimidating way, like a painting that dares you to swim for it. On your second watch, Isla joins you. She's quiet at first, then casually mentions she once saw a sea creature near this spot. Long neck, pale eyes, the size of 3 cows. You raise an eyebrow. I was a child, she shrugs. Or dreaming. Historians still debate sea monster tales from the Scottish coast. Some chalk them up to imaginative fishermen. Others suspect real animals, basking sharks, oversized seals, were misinterpreted in fog and fear. Still, old scrolls describe creatures with curling horns and the ability to sing men overboard. Folklore, yes, but in a world without Google, folk memory holds weight. You squint toward the gray waves, half hoping to see something impossible. You don't, but something about the stillness makes you believe you could. Inside the fortress, life slowly molds itself into routine. There's a strange kind of peace in monotony. You get used to the wind, the hard bread, the soft snoring of the man who sleeps under your bunk and dreams loudly about cows. Then comes the trial. It starts with shouting, then a scuffle. By the time you arrive in the courtyard, a man is on his knees, hands bound with rough cord. He's accused of theft, bread and dried meat from the supply shed. Enough to make a full meal. Enough to feed a family for days. The officer in charge, a younger noble with a face that always looks like it smells something bad, declares that justice must be swift. No one speaks. Then someone suggests the stocks. But this man, young, gaunt, shaking in the cold, is not a local peasant. He's one of you, fought in the fog, carried the wounded, helped bury the dead. Still, that doesn't buy much mercy here. You hear someone mutter, cut off a hand. Another suggests a flogging. And then Isla, of all people, steps forward. Give him my rations for the week, she says. He's already starving. Everyone stares. The officer frowns. And next time, will you offer your hand as well? Silence. In the end, the punishment is mild. A night in the stocks, 2 days without food. A warning. The officer glares at you all like he's disappointed no one wanted blood. That night, Isla doesn't say much. You give her a chunk of your bread without a word. She doesn't thank you. She doesn't have to. You start to notice cracks in the structure. Not in the stone walls, but in morale. Whispers in the hallways. Eyes watching each other too closely. It's not that anyone's planning a mutiny. It's just that no one really wants to be here anymore. Not even the officers. One day, a stranger arrives. He's not in uniform. Wears traveling clothes too clean for these parts. Speaks with an accent you can't quite place. He meets with the noble in private, stays only an hour, and leaves without touching his meal. After he's gone, the noble orders 3 men to pack and ride south, with letters sealed and urgent. Rumors spread faster than lice in the bedding. Some say the king is preparing for war. Others say a treaty has collapsed. A few claim the stranger is a spy. You ask Angus what he thinks. I think if I had money, he says, I'd buy a cow, name it after the noble, and send it to do his job. You laugh, mostly because you picture the cow writing angry letters and shouting at puddles. That night, you find something peculiar tucked in your bedroll, a small carved token in the shape of a wolf. Smooth, polished, hand-sized. No one claims it. You keep it in your cloak pocket, touching it like a charm. The next day, the noble hosts a meeting, rare, formal, and clearly meant to remind you he's in charge. He explains that you'll soon be relieved of duty, which, in his words, is a reward for your service. In reality, they're rotating the levy out, sending your unit home and pulling another batch in. A fresh set of muddy boots and tired eyes. You're not sure how to feel. Relieved? Certainly. But you've changed. Everyone here has. Your time at the fort, strange as it's been, has turned you into something else. You've become the kind of person who can sleep with one eye open, laugh while cleaning mud from a spear, and tell which way the wind blows just by the sound of a creaking door. You dream one last time in the tower, and it's vivid. You're walking along the cliffside, the carved wolf in hand, and below you in the surf is a massive stone with swirling symbols. Pictish again, the same as before, but this time the carvings glow faintly. You wake to dawn breaking over the sea, a sliver of gold on endless gray. It's time to go. You pack your things, say goodbye to the tower, touch the wooden frame once, like it might remember you. Then you follow the others down the road, back toward village life, or what remains of it. Your boots hit familiar earth, but nothing feels the same. The road winds past patches of heather and mossy boulders, skirting sheep that stare at you like you've returned from another planet. You pass a stone marker, weathered and leaning, carved with a faded cross. Your village lies just beyond the ridge. You should be excited. Home means warmth, food, maybe a chance to rest without checking your back every 20 minutes. But the village looks smaller, the roofs more slouched. Even the trees seem more hunched than you remember. When you reach the outer edge, you see it, a new fence. Taller, heavier, made from stripped trees, still bristling with bark. Someone has fortified the village. You're met by elders and a few children, wide-eyed and silent. No one rushes to embrace you. There's caution in every step, like the whole village is holding its breath. It takes you a moment to realize why. You're not just returning villagers. You're armed, weathered, changed. Angus breaks the tension by yelling, "I brought back both ears," and the kids burst out laughing. The elders smile, finally, and someone brings a jug of something warm and fermented. You sit by the fire that night with people you grew up with, sharing stories, at least the lighter ones. No one needs to hear about fog battles or stolen bread. Instead, you talk about the time Isla chased a chicken for 2 hours, or the weird stew the fort cook insisted was boar, even though it squeaked when stirred. Then someone brings up the taxes. A hush falls. You'd forgotten, or tried to. Turns out, while you were away defending the land, the local noble raised the rent again. Land dues, grain quotas, wool taxes, all bumped up. Some say it's to fund castle repairs. Others think he just wants another horse. And now, the villagers are angry. But not in the way you expected. They're organizing. A meeting is held in the main hall, the one with the sagging roof and the owl that sometimes lives in the rafters. Everyone's invited. Even the children get to sit in. The topic? Whether to refuse the tax entirely. A dangerous thought. Refusing rent is no small matter. Under feudal law, it's as close to rebellion as you can get without lighting something on fire. And yet, the room is full of nodding heads. One of the elders, a woman with wiry gray hair and more scars than a sword rack, speaks up. "We feed the land. We tend it. We fight for it. If that's not enough, let him come say so to our faces." A cheer rises, soft at first, then stronger. Historians still debate the extent to which medieval Scottish peasants exercised organized resistance. Some records speak of quiet protests, hidden grain, empty granaries, mysteriously broken wagons. Others mention outright defiance, where entire villages vanished into the hills rather than pay up. Feudal lords, after all, could squeeze only so hard before their tenants simply left. You don't vote, exactly. There are no little slips of paper. But by the end of the meeting, it's clear. The village will send word that this season, no extra grain will be delivered. If the noble wants more, he can bring a spoon. The next few days are tense. Every rider in the distance looks like a tax collector. Every knock at the door feels heavier. You and the others keep weapons nearby, just in case. Then, on a drizzly afternoon, they arrive. 3 riders. One in chainmail, one in leather, and one who looks like he hasn't missed a meal since birth. They carry a letter with a wax seal, and the smugness of people who think parchment is scarier than pitchforks. They read the noble's decree aloud in the square. It's long-winded and full of words like fealty and just dues. The villagers stare at them like they're speaking in goose honks. Then your elder steps forward, the same one from the hall meeting, and hands the riders a bundle. Inside, dirt. "Since the land gives us nothing extra this year," she says calmly, "we give nothing extra back." The riders look stunned. You're amazed they don't fall off their horses. They leave, no violence, no threats. But everyone knows this isn't over. That night, a bonfire is lit in quiet defiance. Not celebratory, just steady. You and Isla sit beside it, watching the flames twist. She fingers the wolf token you showed her weeks ago, then tucks it into your palm. "Might need this," she whispers, "or at least believe we do." A week later, word spreads. Not just your village, but others nearby, are doing the same. Grain refusals, work slowdowns, quiet resistance. It spreads like moss across stone. It's not a revolution. Not yet, but it's the beginning of something. Of course, not all is unity and purpose. One night, a barn burns. No one claims responsibility. The elder calls it an accident. The noble sends a letter calling it treason. You help rebuild the barn, one beam at a time. There's no marching here, no battle, no dramatic speeches, just small acts of refusal, like keeping your grain instead of handing it over, like fixing the village fence rather than the road to the noble's manor, like holding your ground even when your hands shake. In this strange, quiet rebellion, you become something new again. Not just a soldier, not just a farmer, something stubborn, something rooted. You're Scottish, after all. The noble doesn't show up in person. Of course he doesn't. Instead, you get a summons, delivered by another grim-faced messenger, barely old enough to shave, wrapped in too much fur for the mild weather. The message is official, stamped with wax and pretension. It requests that representatives from your village appear at his hall to explain your regrettable failure to meet obligations. Regrettable, like forgetting to bring an extra tart to dinner. The village elders hold another meeting, though this one's less fiery. Everyone's quieter, more cautious. Defying taxes is one thing, walking straight into the lion's den is another. But someone has to go, and somehow, not surprisingly, your name gets tossed into the pot. So now you, Isla, and a few others are riding north, toward Castle Cairnback. It's not the biggest stronghold in the region, but it's certainly dramatic, a looming structure of gray stone and sharp angles, perched on a high hill like a brooding bird. You remember coming here once as a child. It looked enormous then. It still does. The guards at the gate don't speak, just glare. One opens the wooden door with a heavy grunt and waves you inside. Everything smells of damp stone and burnt fat. A torchlit hallway leads you to a long hall where your noble awaits, seated on a throne-like chair, draped in furs, a goblet in hand. It's not gold, but it's trying its best to look like it. He doesn't stand, doesn't greet you, just raises an eyebrow as if to say, "You have 5 seconds to impress me." You clear your throat and begin the speech you rehearsed. It's not bold, not defiant, just honest. The village can't spare more grain, not without risking starvation. You explain the failed harvest, the new children born, the old ones growing weaker. You speak clearly and slowly. Isla stands behind you like a silent oak. When you finish, the noble leans back, then smirks, and says something you'll remember for a long time, then starve with dignity. The hall is silent. No one gasps. No one moves. Just the sound of the fire crackling and your own blood pounding in your ears. You say nothing. Isla places a hand on your arm, just a light touch, not to stop you, but to anchor you. The noble lifts his goblet and dismisses you with a flick of the wrist. Back outside, the wind is colder than before. On the way home, you don't speak. Not for hours. But the silence is a heavy one, like coals under a bed of ash. Historians still argue whether lords like Cairnback were truly that callous, or if their records were exaggerated by frustrated peasants and wandering poets. But some letters do survive, brief, chilling notes that speak of acceptable loss and containment by pressure. One noble once wrote that excess mouths are the fault of lax breeding. Excess mouths, like people were rats. When you return to the village and tell the story, something changes in the crowd. Not fear, not quite. More like clarity. They know now that this isn't going to be solved by logic or polite refusals. That same night, the elder meets with a few trusted villagers, quietly, under the old pine behind the well. You're invited. So is Isla. So is Angus. They talk about moving supplies, hiding reserves, securing safe paths into the woods. Not to flee, but to wait. You've officially entered what they call the season of hush. Every action becomes more careful. Chickens are kept behind huts. Smoke from cooking fires is filtered through damp cloth. No one sings in the fields anymore. Children are taught new games involving silence and signals. One of them, a boy with freckles and a head full of pine needles, creates a whole system of bird calls that mean different things: danger, messenger, food. It's oddly impressive. You don't hunt near the village anymore. Instead, you and Isla hike miles to set snares and check them at dawn. She's better with tracking than you, quieter, steadier. One morning, she stops you just before a ridge, then points down to a clearing. A patrol of armored riders stands around a broken cart. They're searching. You both hold your breath. Eventually they ride on, but their presence is a warning. The noble hasn't forgotten. He's just waiting, or maybe plotting. Later, you help move sacks of oats into a false floor beneath the granary. The floorboard fits too well. Someone planned this months ago. There's a secret space in the elder's hut too, behind a shelf filled with old herbal jars. You've never seen this side of her before. Then one morning, a rider appears, but not one of the noble's men. He wears simple leathers, no heraldry, and speaks in a hushed tone. He says he comes from a village beyond the river, one that also defied tax orders. They were raided 2 nights ago, not by soldiers, by mercenaries. Fires, screams, the kind of punishment designed to make examples. The rider's eyes are wide, haunted. You help feed him, give him a place to sleep. Then you listen as the elders meet again, this time with a different question: stay or scatter. Some argue that the village should split, send children and elderly into the hills. Others want to dig in and defend. No one agrees, but no one raises their voice either. Just quiet deliberation. That night, you lie on your back outside, staring at stars that look too peaceful for such a troubled world. Isla joins you, wrapped in a cloak. "We might not win this," she says, voice barely above the wind. "But maybe we make it so they can't forget we tried." You nod. Then she grins faintly. "Still think I should have punched the noble in the nose." You laugh. Quietly, but you laugh. In the morning, word comes that a local monk, Brother Owen, is offering sanctuary to villagers who wish to hide in the old ruins near the river. The ruins, a monastery half fallen, covered in ivy and crow nests. No one's lived there in decades. Still, it's a chance. You gather your things. You sharpen your blade. You help Isla bundle supplies into wool sacks, then smudge the footprints behind you with pine branches. Whatever comes next, you won't meet it empty-handed. The forest swallows your footsteps. You and Isla move through the trees with care, your boots muffled by layers of damp needles and fallen leaves. Behind you, a small group of villagers follows, quiet, bundled, alert. There are elders carrying baskets, mothers with sleeping children strapped to their backs, and Angus, who is inexplicably carrying a lute. "For morale," he whispered, though he hasn't played a note. The path to the old monastery isn't marked on any map. It winds between hills and glens, crossing cold streams and shadowy groves. Brother Owen said it was once a pilgrimage trail, but now it feels more like a thread through forgotten time. You pass a circle of standing stones, half collapsed and overgrown. Isla pauses, places a hand on one, and whispers something. You don't ask what. When you reach the ruins, they're more majestic than you expected, even in decay. Massive arches frame the sky like broken ribs. Vines hang from crumbling windows. Birds roost in the belfry, their wings flapping softly as you enter what was once the nave. A shattered statue of a saint lies sideways, its face worn blank by weather. Brother Owen greets you with a nod. He's thin but sharp-eyed, with ink-stained fingers and a robe patched in more places than whole. He leads everyone to the crypt, the driest space, and sets up mats of straw and old wool. No one speaks much that night. The monastery breathes around you, creaking and shifting in the wind. You lie beneath the arching stone and feel small. Not in a bad way, more like how it feels to stand beside the sea. Ancient, weightless. Brother Owen explains his plan over a bowl of nettle stew. The monastery has old tunnels beneath it, once used by monks to reach the river or escape raiders. Some are still intact. They could be useful. He's even drawn a rough map, though most of it looks like a spider had a disagreement with a quill. He's also been collecting news. Turns out, your village wasn't the only one to receive a noble visit. Across the region, there have been similar confrontations, taxes raised, punishments dealt, small acts of rebellion met with heavy hands. But there's also talk of something larger. In the west, near the coast, entire clans have begun refusing feudal orders altogether. They've holed up in mountain strongholds and sent back broken tax scrolls with messages carved in bone. Dramatic? Yes. Effective? Maybe. Historians still debate the scale and cohesion of these defiant pockets. Some say they were random, isolated instances of rural frustration. Others argue they represented an early form of what would later become highland resistance culture, land-based, clan-centered, fiercely autonomous. It's hard to tell, of course. Many records were lost or burned. Still, the signs are there. You spend the next few days fortifying the monastery. Not with walls or weapons. You wouldn't last long in a siege, but with camouflage, food stores, hidden signals. Angus sets up a lookout system, using a string of polished glass fragments to reflect sun through the trees. Isla digs out a section of tunnel with alarming enthusiasm. And you patrol. Every morning, every dusk. The forest is different now. Not threatening, but tense. Like it's waiting. One morning, you spot smoke in the distance. Not from your village. A different one. By noon, Brother Owen confirms it. Another settlement, closer to the noble's estate, has been sacked. No survivors stayed. Some scattered. Some, he suspects, will try to find their way here. That night, you stay up beside the crumbling altar, sharpening your blade. Isla joins you and leans back against a pillar, her breath fogging in the air. She tosses you something. It's a piece of carved wood, a miniature thistle. Simple, beautiful. Made it while Angus was tuning his fifth string, she says. You smile and tuck it into your belt. A few days later, the first of the scattered arrive. A family, mother, uncle, 2 children, hollow-eyed and covered in soot. The youngest clutches a piece of burnt bread like its treasure. Brother Owen brings them inside without a word. You help them settle, share your dried berries. Then more come. By the end of the week, the crypt is full. People sleep between the pews, under fallen arches, tucked beneath broken choir benches. The monastery becomes a sanctuary, a secret city of whispers and survival. But with more people come more risks. You notice it first when you find boot prints near the southern hill, too deep to be anyone from your group. Heavy, deliberate. Soldiers. You report it to Brother Owen, who nods solemnly. It was always just a matter of time, he says. A new plan is formed. When the soldiers come, not if, when, you won't fight. You'll disappear. The tunnels will take everyone to the river. Boats have been hidden there, disguised as fallen logs. You'll split into small groups, head toward the highlands, scatter to distant kin and sympathetic clans. That night, you sleep with your boots on. Sure enough, 3 nights later, the watchman glass flashes a red light. They're here. Not hundreds, just a patrol. Enough to do damage. Everyone moves. Quiet, fast, practiced. Children are lifted. Bundles grabbed. Tunnels opened. You and Isla stay behind just long enough to lead the last few into the dark. You hear the crash of boots outside. Voices. One calls out, "In the name of Lord Cairnback," like it means something. Then the monastery echoes with emptiness. You run through the tunnel, torch in hand, every stone familiar now. When you burst out by the river, the others are already pushing boats into the shallows. You help lift an elder in. Isla grabs the tiller. You don't look back until the boat is drifting. The monastery stands silent behind you. Beautiful, broken, brave. In the boat, children huddle close. Angus finally strums the lute, a slow, soft tune. The river carries you north, into the trees, beneath stars too bright to belong to such a dark night. And somehow, in the middle of flight, in the middle of fear, you feel free. The boat slides beneath a canopy of stars as the current carries you deeper into the highland glens. The river is wide here, bordered by steep banks and twisted trees that seem to lean over you like watchful old spirits. The silence is almost too complete, just the soft lap of water against wood, the distant hoot of an owl, and Angus quietly tuning his lute again because the damp makes her moody. You drift for hours. Isla takes turns at the tiller, guiding you around sandbars and submerged branches. At one point, a deer steps delicately into the water, watches you pass, then vanishes with a flick of its tail. It feels like the kind of moment you should paint on a tapestry, if you weren't, fleeing soldiers. Eventually, you beach the boats in a dense thicket and climb into the hills. A narrow game trail winds up through misty pines and slick rocks. You help a small child clamber over a fallen log, her hand tiny in yours. She doesn't cry, just stares up at the stars like they're keeping score. By morning, you've reached a hidden bothy, a stone shelter tucked beneath a cliff, with just enough roof left to stay dry. Brother Owen passes around strips of dried venison and elderberry tea. Everyone eats quietly, knees drawn to chests, eyes flickering with exhaustion. The next few days blur. You move from shelter to shelter, never staying long. The group splits into smaller bands, each heading toward different kinfolk or rumored safe spots. Some plan to reach the Isles. Others speak of Stirling, where rumors swirl of unrest. Protests in the market squares, murmured defiance against the nobles. But your little group, you're headed toward a place Isla calls the Hollow. A secluded glen once used by outlawed clans, protected by natural ridges and a near-impossible trail. You'll be safe there, for a while. Climbing becomes your daily rhythm. Each morning, you shoulder your pack, lace your boots, and follow Isla's boot prints through heather and fog. The trail narrows to the width of a sheep's path. One misstep, and it's a long tumble into the gorge. But no one complains. Even Angus, who twisted his ankle, just grunts and leans on a stick he named Lady Bramble. At night, you huddle around smoky fires, sipping pine needle broth and listening to Brother Owen share scraps of history. He tells you about an ancient rebellion led by a forgotten chieftain, a woman named Mairead the Stubborn. Legend says she once held off 3 noble armies by building a maze of dead-end tunnels into the side of a hill. Some scholars claim she never existed, just another folktale to comfort the desperate. Others point to cryptic writings in old abbey scrolls that mention her by name. Historians still argue whether Mairead was real, or just a symbol of Highland defiance. But in the flicker of firelight, with your muscles aching and your breath misting the air, you decide she existed. You want her to have existed. One afternoon, Isla stops suddenly at a ridge. She gestures ahead, and there it is. The hollow. It opens before you like a secret cupped in the palm of the mountain. A bowl of green, surrounded by jagged cliffs, where a small stream trickles through mossy rocks. Tucked against one side is a cluster of stone huts, long abandoned but still standing. The roofs have sagged, but the hearths are dry. A few goats wander nearby, watching you like tiny, judgmental sentinels. You descend carefully, and as your feet touch the glen floor, you exhale, for the first time in what feels like weeks. Home, at least for now. Everyone sets to work without needing instruction. Fires are lit, huts are cleared, mossy stone is scrubbed with bristled branches. You help reinforce the roof of one shelter with woven reeds, occasionally swatting away midges that seem determined to chew through your face. It's hard work, but it feels good. You're building something, not just a place to hide, a place to live. The children chase each other around the stream, their laughter echoing against the stone. One of them, the small girl you helped in the boat, gives you a crown of thistles and calls you Lord of Prickles. You pretend to knight her with a stick. She giggles and runs off. At dinner, Brother Owen brings out a small, tattered book. It's a psalter, a monk's prayer book, but he uses it now to keep track of stories. Names. Places. The things the nobles tried to erase. You lean over his shoulder as he carefully writes, arrived in the hollow. Spirits high. Rain held off. One goat stole Angus's jerky. You offer a suggestion, add that we survived. That matters too. He smiles and writes it in neat script. The next day you begin drills. Not for war, not yet, but for readiness. Isla teaches the children how to hide quickly if danger comes. You and Angus practice signal fires. 1 flash means travelers. 2 flashes mean friends. 3 means run. You mark escape paths with subtle carvings on trees. Everyone contributes, but you can't help feeling it. A pressure in the air. A waiting. One night, you hear a sound outside your hut, a crunch of rock underfoot. You grab your blade and slip out into the dark. A man stands at the edge of the hollow. He's tall, wrapped in a dark plaid, with a scar down his cheek and eyes like storm clouds. He lifts a hand slowly, not threatening. Behind him, more figures appear. He steps forward. You Isla? She nods. We heard what you did at the monastery, he says, and we came to help. Turns out, you're not the only ones who've been resisting. Across the highlands, word of your escape spread, and so did hope. These strangers have brought tools, seeds, news. The nobles still control the roads, but the hills belong to the clans. Historians call this a liminal moment, not quite revolution, not quite survival. A tension point in the story of a people. Some records hint that resistance began here, in glens like yours. Others argue it was merely a pause before the next wave of repression. But you're not thinking about all that. You're watching Isla offer the man a seat by the fire. You're passing a bowl of pine broth to a child you don't know. You're breathing cold, clean air under stars that don't feel so distant anymore. And for the first time in a long while, you feel like this might become something more than survival. It might become a future. The fire crackles low as you sit beside Isla, watching the newcomers settle into the hollow like moss finding old stone. The scarred man's name is Fergal, and he's not just a wanderer. He's a former member of a Highland watch, trained in tracking, foraging, and what he calls the art of not dying. His quiet intensity balances well with Isla's calm leadership, and within days, they're coordinating efforts like they've always worked together. You help build raised beds for planting kale and barley. Others mend a broken sluice gate at the stream's edge to guide more water to the crops. Children are given lessons on the names of trees and edible roots. Even Angus, who once could barely be trusted to carry his own pack straight, starts keeping careful records of who comes and goes. He's developed a rather enthusiastic system involving pebbles and different colored moss. No one understands it but him, and that somehow makes it more charming. Still, as the days stretch into weeks, you can't shake the sense that you're living on borrowed time, because the nobles haven't forgotten you, and neither has the church. It's early morning when a hawk swoops low over the hollow, a ribbon tied around its leg. Fergal catches it carefully and removes a scroll, a note from a sympathetic contact near Perth. The news is grim. A new tax edict has passed, giving noble lords power to seize crops and conscript labor in the name of crown protection. Brother Owen shakes his head slowly, fingering his worn prayer beads. They don't just want obedience, he murmurs. They want erasure. Historians still debate the extent of this edict's enforcement. Some argue it was more symbolic, a flex of centralized power. Others claim local lords used it to escalate pressure in rural regions like the highlands, seizing both food and people. What's certain is that fear tightened like a belt around these communities. But in your hollow, something else tightens too. Resolve. The council, such as it is, meets that night. Isla, Fergal, Brother Owen, you, and a few of the other elders sit in a half circle, the firelight painting your faces with flickers of orange and shadow. You speak of next steps, of what comes after survival. The idea that forms slowly, almost shyly, is this a network? Not rebellion. Not yet. But a web of hidden hollows, safe routes, shared resources, signal points carved into old trees or hidden among standing stones. A system that allows the scattered, the hunted, and the voiceless to become something else. Connected. You volunteered to be part of the first scouting party. Fergal nods approvingly. You've got eyes that notice, he says, and feet that don't stomp like thunder. You don't tell him about that time you fell into a bog hole chasing a butterfly. One victory at a time. You set out 2 mornings later, under cover of mist and rain. With you are Isla, Fergal, and a young woman named Nessa who speaks 5 dialects and can whistle bird songs that sound eerily convincing. She's also annoyingly good at scrambling up cliffs. You're not. Together, you head toward Glen Lyon, where rumor has it a shepherd family has been hiding fugitives in their sheep pens. You take a winding path through birch forests and narrow goat trails, avoiding anything that looks remotely like a road. At night, you sleep beneath pine boughs. At dawn, you eat cold bannocks and wipe the dew from your faces like weary forest sprites. When you finally reach the glen, you find more than you expected. The shepherds not only exist, they've built a small underground chamber beneath their barn. And they're not alone. There are 2 monks, a former tax scribe who burned his ledgers, and a mother with twin boys who haven't spoken in weeks. They look at your ragged group with both hope and suspicion. Isla kneels to the children's level. We've made a place, she says softly. Would you like to see it? They nod. The mother weeps. You mark the glen's location carefully on your map, not with words, but with small symbols. A curved sheep's horn for safety, a hidden star to show an underground space. You've begun building a language, one that the nobles can't read. When you return to the hollow a week later, you're changed. Not just thinner and more tired, but more aware of just how many people are out there, waiting, hoping, hiding. And you're not the only one returning. More groups have come in your absence. The hollow buzzes with activity now. There are stonecutters patching a broken hut wall, weavers crafting warm cloaks from wool and thistle fiber, children learning the shape of letters with sticks in the mud. Someone's even made a crude library using crates and flat rocks. Brother Owen beams. Our revolution begins with books, apparently. Angus raises a hand. And jerky. You chuckle, but the truth is, it's working. And yet, a shadow remains. One evening, while gathering herbs near the stream, you hear movement. Not the usual rustle of wind or scurry of deer. Something heavier. Purposeful. You freeze, every muscle alert. 2 men stand across the water. They're in half armor, crests worn but recognizable, minor nobles' guards. One holds a short spear. The other points at you. You there, he calls. State your name and purpose. You blink. You say, I'm Lord of Prickles. He frowns. You run. They chase. You dart through the trees, breath catching in your chest, until you reach the signal fire post and light the prepared bundle. Smoke curls into the air in a thick spiral. Within minutes, others rush to meet you. The guards vanish. No one can find their tracks after that. Were they scouts? Lost soldiers? Or worse, spies? Historians disagree about whether such encounters were common or the stuff of local rumor. Some records mention roaming tax squads in noble lands. Others suggest that after a failed raid, nobles would send individuals to trace refugees, offering rewards for names. But whatever the truth, you know now, you've been found. It's time to prepare for more than signal fires. It's time to prepare for defense. And the hollow, your quiet glen, may not stay hidden forever. You wake before dawn, heart still racing from yesterday's chase. The cool air bites your skin as you step outside the thatched hut, the dewy grass clinging to your bare feet. In the distance, a low fog snakes through the hollow like a shy ghost not quite ready to leave. There's no denying it now. The hidden safety of the glen is cracking at the edges. If soldiers could get this close once, they could again. You imagine the polished boots of a noble's men marching through the trees, trampling your garden rows, dragging Angus by his wild hair. Though to be fair, he could use a haircut. Fergal's already up. He hands you a cup of heather tea and nods grimly toward the treeline. Today, he says, we learn how to vanish. And vanish you do, or try to. The morning is spent digging new hiding nooks among the roots of massive oaks. You help string pine boughs over narrow tunnels that lead into false hillsides. Fergal teaches the younger kids to scatter dirt in strange patterns behind them, to break tracking lines. Brother Owen adds blessings to every entrance, not because it hides them, but because it comforts them. Like writing polite notes to the forest, he chuckles, inscribing a symbol in ash on a stone. It may not read, but it listens. Meanwhile, Isla draws plans for rotating the location of food stores. We can't keep everything in one place, she says, pointing to 3 different root cellars. If they burn one, we survive on the others. Like squirrels, but taller and with anxiety. Historians still debate how widespread these types of rural resistance tactics were. Some evidence shows entire highland villages shifting locations seasonally, blending back into the woods when danger approached. Others argue this was rare, reserved only for the most remote clans. But in your little hollow, it becomes daily life. The children learn call signs and birdsong. The elders pass stories coded in riddles. Someone, probably Angus, carves a wooden squirrel wearing armor and places it at the edge of the glen. It becomes your unofficial mascot. The kids name it Sir Nibbles. Yet despite all the precaution, fear has a sneaky way of threading itself through every moment. When a twig snaps in the woods, people freeze. When a hawk flies too low, someone dives for the nearest burrow. You start dreaming of boots. Always boots. But even fear gets tired. Weeks pass without incident. The late summer sun ripens the barley, and the small orchard of crabapple trees begins to blossom again. There's a lull, the kind of peace that feels dangerous. You can't tell if it's a trap or a gift you don't deserve, until the visitor comes. You spot her from the Watch Ridge, a speck on the moorland, slowly making her way down the winding sheep path. She walks alone, limping slightly, wrapped in a patched tartan with a deep green hood. From this distance, she could be a traitor, a widow, a spy, or all 3. Isla meets her halfway. They speak briefly, quietly, like old friends who once parted on bad terms. You can't hear what's said, but when Isla returns, her face is unreadable. She's from Clan Macdub, she tells the gathered council. She says they've had enough. Enough of what? Everything. Apparently, the Macdubs, once loyal to the local noble families, had a change of heart after 2 of their children were seized to serve as pages in the lowland court. More like hostages, the visitor had whispered. And now, they're preparing to fight. A small local uprising. Just the mention of it sends murmurs through the hollow. Fight! That's not what you do here. You hide, you grow food, you rescue, you learn. But fight? Isla sees the question in your face. If we don't help, she says softly, the Macdubs fall. And if they fall, we lose the West Road. We lose the glens beyond it. We lose everyone they protect. Fergal sharpens his knife. Brother Owen sighs and rubs his temple. This is how it begins, he mutters. Not with a trumpet, but but with a grandmother walking alone. The council debates for hours. Historians often cite moments like this, when localized resistance either dissolves or becomes a spark. The Battle of Loudon Hill in 1307 is a famous example. A smaller, less equipped force using clever terrain and intimate knowledge of land to challenge a larger army. While that battle came later, it proves what your little group is starting to understand. Sometimes, knowing the land better than your enemy is your greatest weapon. Finally, you agree. Not to full-out war, but support. Fergal, Isla, and 2 others will help the MacDubs train in guerrilla tactics. You'll supply food, maps, and messages passed through Nessa's network. The kids even craft tiny coated pebbles to leave as breadcrumbs, a squirrel etched for safe, a boot for danger, and a loaf of bread for very hungry, please send snacks. And so, for the first time, your community looks outward with fire in its belly. The training begins in the woods beyond the hollow. You teach others how to fall silently into ferns, how to roll your weight over moss without leaving a trace, how to use birdsong to signal retreat. It's strange, almost thrilling, like living in a secret spy movie, but one where your main weapon is a sharpened stick and your codename is probably Leaf. And just when you think maybe, just maybe, you're ready, something happens. A messenger arrives, face bruised, cloak torn, limping from exhaustion. The MacDub stronghold has burned. Not entirely, just one barn. But it was enough. Enough to send a message. You're not safe. Not yet. Not ever. Still, the messenger adds, they saved the grain stores. Because of your warning system. Because of the network. Because of you. You sleep with one eye open now. There's a new rhythm to the hollow, a beat that thrums underneath everything. Under the quiet harvesting of roots, under the hush of evening tea, under the children's whispered games in the grass. It's the drum of awareness, of knowing you're no longer invisible. And yet, something else rises with it, pride. The kind that grows slowly, like a stubborn moss on an old stone. Because you didn't just survive that first strike on the MacDubs, you helped them endure it. You warned them in time, preserved food that might feed a dozen families through the winter. It was a small victory, yes, but it was yours. You and Fergal spend your mornings sketching crude maps on bark, connecting distant clearings and hidden passes with charcoal lines. Brother Owen helps craft messages with tiny Latin symbols to throw off any curious eyes. Even Angus contributes, though his idea of security includes replacing river stepping stones with hollow ones that drop intruders straight into freezing water. You actually keep that one, but it's not all daring resistance and sneaky tricks. There's a different kind of danger creeping in now, exhaustion. You notice it first in Isla. She's been leading training, nursing wounded runners, organizing food stores, and mediating petty arguments over rabbit stew portions, all without sleep. Her hands shake when she lifts a kettle. Her laugh is hollow. Can't stop, she tells you, brushing off your concern. If I stop, it all falls apart. That phrase sticks to your ribs. Because maybe she's right. And maybe that's the real brutality of it. The quiet knowledge that even when you win a battle, the cost is your body, your breath, your sense of peace. Historians still argue over how much coordination actually occurred between remote highland communities like yours. Some believe in a scattered system of mutual aid and coded symbols. Others argue that these tales are romantic exaggerations, stitched together by later writers hungry for heroes. But you live the truth, disorganized but determined, fragile but fiery. And so life rolls on. Winter creeps close. The mornings bite harder, the fog lingers longer, and your breath becomes visible well into midday. The earth feels tighter, like it's holding its secrets deeper underground. You switch into winter routines, cutting peat, salting meat, lining cloaks with matted wool. Nessa's carrier pigeons wear little leather hoods now, to keep them warm during long flights. You swear one of them gives you a look that says, "Unionize us or else." Then one morning, a sharp knock at the edge of the hollow. You freeze. No one ever knocks. Not here. It's a boy. 12, maybe 13. His cloak is torn, and his lip is split. They're moving east, he gasps. Past the Black Lock. The Black Lock. That's near the Twin Peaks. That's too close. You rush to Isla. The hollow buzzes with sudden activity. Runners dispatched, messages carved, food wrapped and tucked into travel sacks. You're not soldiers, but you're a web now. And webs tighten. You and a small crew make your way toward the Twin Peaks that afternoon. It's a silent hike, boots sinking into wet moss, eyes flicking to every rustle in the brush. The air feels heavy with watching. You reach a ridge just in time to see them. A patrol. 6 men in noble livery, torches strapped to their backs, iron helmets catching the gray light. They're not raiding, not yet. Just scouting, mapping, planning. You clench your fists. Your mind flashes back to the MacDub barn, to Isla's shaking hands, to that phrase again. If I stop, it all falls apart. And that's when Fergal does something outrageous. He whistles. A high, sharp note that cuts the air. The patrol spins. And your crew, all 7 of you, scatter like birds. They chase, of course. And it's chaos. Your boots skid over wet stone, your breath burning in your chest. Behind you, shouting, crashing, a soldier tripping over a root and cursing. You duck under branches, leap a small creek, dart into a bramble patch so dense it tears at your cloak. One man behind you tries to follow, and stumbles into a rabbit snare you set last spring. He goes down with a yelp. You don't stop. You make it to the old fox den and crawl inside, heart thudding like a war drum. Above, bootsteps. One of them mutters. Another curses. A pause. Then slowly they retreat. When you return to the hollow that night, bleeding slightly from a bramble scratch and still tasting fear in your throat, you find Isla waiting with a blanket and hot broth. Don't ever do that again, she scolds, but her voice cracks at the end. The scouts didn't find the hollow. Not this time. But it's clear now, they're getting smarter. And braver. The next morning, Brother Owen begins reinforcing the prayer stones around your perimeter. Not because it works, he mumbles. Because it helps. You understand. Isla finally rests, but only after you and Nessa stage a gentle intervention involving chamomile, threatening lullabies, and Angus guarding her door with a stick labeled staff of enforcement. The children gather around Sir Nibbles, your little wooden squirrel mascot, and add a new piece to his armor. A tiny carved shield. One of them whispers, "We need to protect him too." You don't say it, but you think it's him protecting you. By the time the snow arrives, you've built a second false glen, further into the woods. Just in case. And the patrols? They don't come back. For now. But even as snowflakes dust the mossy floor and your belly warms with stew and stories, you know that peace, like everything else in this life, is always borrowed, never bought. The snow settles thick that year, blanketing everything in a soft, deceptive peace. At first, it feels like a gift, the world hushed, the air still, the flickering glow of firelight from inside the hollow's huts wrapping you in warmth like a woolen embrace. The younger ones build lopsided snowmen. Angus insists on giving them names like Chief Fluffbeard and Sir Crumbletoes. Someone adds antlers made of kindling, but you know better than to be lulled. Snow in the highlands is more than a season. It's a test. Even before sunrise, you're up, clearing paths between shelters, shaking snow from thatched roofs, tending to the livestock that groan under icy breath. Water jugs are frozen solid, food takes longer to cook, and firewood seems to burn away twice as fast. Then the first real sign of trouble. One of Nessa's pigeons returns, barely. Its wings are trembling, its legs scratched raw, the message almost torn. You cradle the bird like it's a child and pass the crumpled paper to Isla. She reads it once, then again, and sighs. They've built a new outpost. You feel the words like a stone dropped in your stomach. Another fort, this one not far from Glen Torrin, a place the Hollow had always considered relatively safe. Now, just another circle on the map with a question mark over it. Historians still debate the extent of English fortification in the Highlands during this period. Some argue that most were temporary garrisons, little more than tents and wooden stakes. Others claim there were more enduring structures, early stone keeps or watchtowers, funded by noble land seizures. You only know what you see. And what you see are soldiers, again, moving closer. It's Isla who makes the call. "We can't defend this hollow forever," she says quietly, eyes scanning the firelight. You think she's about to suggest retreat. But no, time to strike first. Cue the silence. Fergal spits out his tea. Brother Owen goes pale. Even Sir Nibbles, carved into the mantle above, seems to lean forward a little. "You want us to attack?" "Not a war," Isla clarifies. "A message." That's how you find yourself, 2 nights later, belly crawling through a snow-covered ditch beside Nessa and Angus, your breath fogging in front of you. You've never been colder, or more awake. Your target isn't the fort itself, too dangerous, too well guarded, but their supply line. A narrow trail winding through the woods where carts carry grain, firewood, and wool from nearby villages. You know they depend on it. Cut the supply line, rattle the patrols, and maybe, just maybe, they'll second-guess their expansion. Your heart pounds like a war drum as you reach the trail. Nessa gives a quiet chirp, bird-like, and the others fan out. You set the traps. Slippery oil on the downhill path. Ropes just above ankle height. Fergal even plants what he calls thunder pots. Crude little jars filled with a surprise mixture of powdered sulfur and crushed pebbles. Won't kill, he says with a grin, but it'll make 'em cry for their mums. And then you wait. It doesn't take long. The next morning, as the sun peaks over the ridgeline, you hear it, the crash of a wagon, a shout, a thunder pot exploding with a pop and a puff of black smoke. You're already halfway home. Later, you learn they lost 2 carts of grain and half a dozen boots. Just boots. Stolen by Angus, who plans to build what he calls the Foot Army. You don't ask questions, but retaliation comes swiftly. 2 days later, one of your outer shelters is burned. No one hurt, thankfully. It was empty, decoyed with stale bread and a wooden fake goat, Sir Nibble's cousin presumably. But the message is clear. And worse, the scouts are learning. They're quieter now, smarter, more patient. One snowy morning, you wake to find strange prints near the glen. Boot marks and not yours. Whoever it was, they came close. Too close. It rattles the hollow. For the first time in weeks, people whisper of leaving, of scattering, of starting over somewhere else. But Isla gathers them that night. No fire, just huddled cloaks and quiet resolve. If we leave, they'll follow, she says. And if we run forever, we forget who we are. That settles it. The next few days are a frenzy of preparation. You work around the clock, reinforcing walls with packed snow and mud, setting more traps, organizing watch shifts, even teaching some of the teens how to defend themselves. Not with swords, with noise, distraction, and cleverness. You also commission a new carving from Brother Owen, a small wooden tablet to hang on the wall beside Sir Nibble's. It reads, "We do not vanish. We adapt." That night, you finally sleep and dream of warmth. Not fire, but sunlight, soft and golden, spilling over green hills, sheep grazing peacefully, no walls, no traps. But even in your dream, you carry a slingshot in your cloak, because you know better now. In medieval Scotland, peace doesn't arrive like a songbird. It arrives like a shadow, tentative, flickering, hard one. You learn to hold it gently, and guard it fiercely. Snow gives way to mud, not gracefully, not with the gentle drip of icicles or the warm perfume of spring flowers, but with a loud, slushy, ankle-deep squelch that turns every trail into soup and every outing into a balancing act. You're immediately reminded why Highland winters are only half the battle. The after is just as brutal. Everything stinks. Wet wool, damp moss, the lingering tang of smoke from your poorly vented chimney. Even Sir Nibbles has a mildew patch forming on his carved foot. But what mud brings more than stink is movement. The frost is cracked, the soldiers can march again, and sure enough, Isla gathers you and the others before dawn one morning, holding a scrap of parchment like it's a live wasp. They're moving fast now. 3 patrols. Same direction. Glen Forsa. You feel it immediately in your gut. Glen Forsa is near one of the hidden storage caches. The one with the salted fish. And more importantly, the one with 3 families hiding inside a cave just above the shoreline. You don't need convincing. You go. Your boots are soaked in 10 minutes. The air smells like wet hay and anxiety. Every bird call feels like a warning. Fergal keeps muttering about how this time he brought the real thunder pots. You try not to ask questions. When you reach Glen Forsa, it's nearly evening. Low clouds press overhead, turning the whole sky into a damp woolen ceiling. The cave is still hidden, but the tracks leading near it? Not so hidden. Soldier boots. 2 sets, maybe 3. The patrol didn't just pass by. They stopped here. Isla makes the call again. We split. Distract. Lure them west. Buy them time. Classic Isla. Historians today still argue about tactics used by Highlanders resisting foreign incursion during these years. Some point to irregular, guerrilla-style diversions and the clever use of terrain. Others insist these communities lacked any real coordination, that resistance was more reactive than planned. But you've lived it, and you know that planning happens not in palaces, but in whispers, passed between hands like bread. So you head west. You take Angus and two others. You have a cowbell, a slingshot, and one of those thunder pots Fergal keeps bragging about. It's not much, but then again, you're not trying to win a war. You're just trying to pull three tired men in armor in the wrong direction. It works. Too well. The bell clangs. The thunder pot explodes with a noise like an angry kettle. You and your crew dart through the brush, whooping and hollering like lunatics. And sure enough, the soldiers come crashing after you. But you misjudge the marshland. Angus sinks up to his thigh in sticky muck. One of the others twists an ankle. You double back, grabbing branches, tugging, swearing under your breath. Behind you a shout. Closer. They're gaining. You make the call. Split. I'll lead them off. You don't wait for them to argue. You run. Full tilt. Through the reeds, through thorns that tear at your arms, across a shallow creek so cold your bones squeal. You crash into a patch of heather and stay low, panting. The world tilts around you. Bootsteps. Two soldiers. Talking quietly. Looking. One of them stops, directly above your hiding place. Your breath stops. He turns, says something in a language you don't recognize, and then miraculously moves on. You don't dare move until the sun dips fully below the horizon. When you return to Glen Forsa, the cave is empty. In the best way. The families are gone, safely evacuated inland. The fish too. Someone even remembered the wooden spoons. Typical Highland priorities. You regroup at the hollow 3 days later. Bruised. Cold. Alive. Isla claps your shoulder once. Says nothing. Doesn't need to. But things have shifted. The soldiers know your tricks now. They're slower to chase. Quicker to set traps of their own. You find one. A snare in the middle of what used to be your safe route through the pines. Nessa nearly walks into it. Even worse, the outpost near Glen Torrin. It's growing. New walls. More guards. You send a runner to confirm. They don't come back. For the first time, Brother Owen looks scared. He's always been your anchor, even when praying in Latin while tripping on pine cones. But now he holds his carved beads like they're the last thread holding him to anything at all. That night, you dream of fire again. But not a raid. A lighthouse. A tall stone tower on a cliff, lit by oil and beacon, warning ships away from dangerous shores. You stand inside it, warm and dry, guiding others away from wreckage. When you wake, something clicks. Signal fire, you tell Isla. What if we build one? She blinks. Like an actual tower? No, you say. Just the message. A high point. Light a fire when danger's near. 3 blinks for an army. 2 for scouts. 1 for a friend. Isla considers. Then nods. Within days, you've identified 3 ridgelines and 2 tall trees. You call them whisper towers, even though they're just stone piles and damp moss. But they work. Runners pass messages faster now. You even add a bell made from an old pot, strung up with deer sinew. When it chimes in the wind, it sounds almost like a church. You finally feel connected. But you also know what that means. Connection is visibility, and visibility invites risk. Still, you go to sleep that night with the comforting scent of peat smoke and pine in your nose. Someone's playing a quiet tune on a reed flute near the central fire. Children are laughing. Angus is trying to teach a goat to jump rope. You smile. But even as your eyelids drift, you whisper to yourself, "We're not done yet." And you're right, because just beyond the ridge, on the edge of Glen Torrin, a soldier is watching the smoke and marking it on a map. By the time you see the smoke from the ridge, it's too late to pretend it's anything else. Thick, dark, rising in a heavy column, not the gentle curl of a cook fire, not the meandering trail of someone's bathhouse boiler. No, this is a signal of another kind, a burn meant to warn, or worse, to mark. And it's not yours. You tighten your grip on the leather strap of your slingshot. Your stomach churns with something older than fear, a sour, metallic edge you've only tasted once before, the day they burned the decoy shelter. But this isn't a decoy. It's your northern outpost. Isla says nothing at first. She just stands with one hand against the stone wall, staring toward the column of smoke like it's a riddle she's already solved. Her mouth is set in that familiar line, part grief, part grit. Then They want us to react. She's right. Historians still puzzle over these psychological strategies. Whether soldiers in this era truly grasped the power of fear as a weapon, or if they stumbled into it through instinct and brutality. What you know is this: fear works. You've seen what it does. And this fire? This is not conquest. This is pressure. But you can't just not react. There were people in that outpost. You leave before dawn, wind biting at your cheeks, your hood heavy with frost. Nessa insists on coming. So does Fergal, armed with a backpack full of misfortune in a jar. You remind him, gently, that last time his thunder pots also took out a chicken coop. He promises these are less poultry-oriented. It takes a full day to reach the ruins. Ash clings to everything, black and gray, and still hot in places. The outpost's main hut is half-standing, its roof caved in like a punched nose. You tread carefully, scanning for signs of life, or at least clues. The snow around the area is melted to sludge, but you find tracks. Deep boot prints. At least 8 men, maybe more. Horses. They didn't come quietly. And yet, no blood. No bodies. You feel a tiny thread of hope twist in your chest. They took them alive, says Nessa. You nod. Then you find the marking. On a plank, scorched at the edges, a crudely drawn cross with a single slash beneath it. Isla told you once, some English soldiers use symbols like this to tag their work. A threat. A claim. You stare at it, and you make a decision. That night, back at the hollow, you call a gathering. Not just the inner circle, everyone. Old, young, skilled, shaky. People with slingshots, people with soup ladles. Isla watches from the edge of the crowd, arms folded. You speak slowly. Not loud. Just enough. They took our people. They burned our land. And they marked it. You gesture toward the scrap of scorched wood you carried back. I say we mark it back. This isn't about war. Not the kind sung about in sagas. This is about voice. Identity. Line in the muck. The next day the plan forms. Not a raid, not a rescue. A reply. One of the smaller outposts they built, east of the glen, has minimal guards. It's mostly for storage. And right now, it holds barrels of grain and dried cod. Valuable. Vulnerable. So you go. At twilight, you and a team of 6 approach the outpost from the west. You've timed the patrol routes, thanks to Isla's clever use of reflective glass and someone's mirror shard. It feels ridiculous and brilliant at the same time. Inside the storage hut, it's dark but dry. You don't steal anything. You just leave something behind. A carved cross, but not their kind. Yours. A highland knot, etched into the wall above the grain barrels, with a strip of tartan pinned beneath it. You're marked. When the patrol finds it, they don't understand what it means. But they understand that it means something. The next day, scouts report that the soldiers have tripled their guard at the outpost. No more grain runs. No more carelessness. They've been warned. Back at the hollow, you find yourself staring into the fire again. Only this time, there's something new in the silence. A hum. A soft one, barely there. Coming from one of the older women weaving by lamplight. A lullaby. You haven't heard it since your mother was alive. The melody wraps around you, slow and lilting, like the hillside wind on a warm day. You don't know all the words. Doesn't matter. It anchors you. You fall asleep to that sound. But your dreams twist. You see the captives. Tied cold, not hurt yet. You wake with a single phrase repeating in your mind. We don't leave our own. The next morning, you gather Isla and Brother Owen. It's time to bring them home. This time, you won't just rattle the cage. You'll open it, but you'll do it your way. Quiet, precise, unseen. And if the cage breaks, well, so be it. You light a small flame at the center of the hollow. One flicker, the signal for a friend. And slowly, from hilltops and hollows, other lights flicker back. The rescue doesn't begin with swords or shouting. It begins with cheese. Yes, cheese. Not the crumbly kind you sprinkle on stew, but a full wheel, laced with valerian root and stashed in a burlap sack that's just accidentally left near the soldiers' watch fire. Turns out even guards with polished helmets and marching orders have a soft spot for mysterious snacks, especially when they're sleepy ones. So, under cover of night, you and 3 others creep toward the makeshift prison, a longhouse north of Glen Torrin, surrounded by low fencing and 2 very drowsy sentries who are now slumped at odd angles, dreaming about sheep. Fergal calls it the moo nap trap. You make a mental note never to eat his cheese again. Inside, it's quiet, damp, a little too warm. You hear muffled breathing, a dozen people or more, all bundled in old cloaks and straw bedding. Someone stirs, then freezes when they see your face in the dim light. You press a finger to your lips. The unlocker, a wiry lad named Toma, who once bragged about picking a bishop's pocket, takes all of 30 seconds to wiggle the bolt loose. The door creaks open with a sound like a very old man sighing in relief. One by one, the captives shuffle out. Owen whispers their names like a litany, checking each one against memory. You recognize the fisherwoman who gave you that hideous knitted scarf, 2 teenage boys who once tried to race goats down a slope, and even the old beekeeper with only 3 working teeth and a surprising ability to sprint when properly motivated. They're alive. You guide them into the trees. No shouting, no chaos, just breath and branches and the soft squelch of moss underfoot. Halfway up the ridge, one of the teenagers stumbles. You scoop him up, muscles burning, and he clings to you like a baby squirrel. You don't stop, not until you see the whisper fire flickering from the high ridge, your people waiting. And then you're home. The hollow swells with movement. Blankets, broth, voices, everything at once. Someone starts a tune on the reed flute again, and for the first time in days, it doesn't sound sad. Isla catches your eye across the fire. She doesn't smile, not quite, but the edge in her jaw loosens. You sit down beside Owen, who's staring into the flames with his hands folded. "We were almost too late," you murmur. He nods. "We were almost too small." And you realize, with the weight of the weeks behind you, that that's what they wanted you to believe, that you were too small to matter, that Highland fire couldn't outlast a marching army. But here you are. The hollow has grown. New people arrive daily now. Some bring food. Some bring stories. Some bring just silence and the bruises of what they left behind. But they stay, and the whisper fires grow more frequent. Historians still debate the effectiveness of these community-based resistance efforts. Some label them primitive, uncoordinated. Others now praise them as proto-networks, decentralized systems of mutual care and shared defiance. You don't have the language for any of that. You just know it works. One night, as spring finally crests the hills and the moss starts blooming again, Isla hands you a smooth stone. Carved into its face is the knot, your mark. You look at her. She nods toward the hill above the hollow. There, rising just above the trees, is a new structure. Not a fortress, not a hut, a tower, just tall enough to see far. Inside, a spiral of stairs, and at the top, a hearth ready for flame. You climb it the next morning. You light the first signal at dawn, and you watch. One by one, across the hills, other flames answer back. You are not alone. You are never alone. And with that warmth blooming in your chest, despite the dampness, despite the mud, despite everything, you sit down, lean back against the stone, and let your eyelids drift. The tower creaks in the wind, but it holds. It always will. Soothing segment now. Let go of the echoes of footsteps and the hum of highland wind. Set down your sling and your thunder pots and all your clever tricks. Let the moss soften under your back, the air cool against your cheeks. Feel your heartbeat slow, like distant drumbeats fading into a valley of stillness. You're home now, truly home, where fires flicker safely and songs hum low and gentle, where the night is long but kind and no footsteps disturb the path. Inhale slowly, feel the earth hold you. Exhale softer, let go of the chase. Let your breath match the lull of reed flutes and whispering trees. Nothing to fight here, nothing to fix, just the hush of heather, the cradle of stone, and the peace of being enough. So drift now, wrapped in old tartan and quiet songs. Drift past firelight and memory, into the long sleep of safety. The hill watches over you. The tower stands, and all is well.